Welcome everyone. My name is Sean, and normally on this channel, when we talk about the bad actions of a particular judge, usually we're referring to a bail-like situation. Somebody's arrested, they have a long history, they're a repeat offender, they're a violent offender, yet they are released out on bond or without bond because the judge decided that this individual deserves to be free to reoffend again while awaiting trial. However, in this case, we actually have something oh so much more special because Houston is absolutely insane. I don't know what's going on in the state of Texas, and judges are actually releasing people after they're convicted of crimes, in this case a murder, to do important things like get their hair cut. Now we're going to get into this. Maybe I'll even suggest the barbershop for you somewhere down the line. But first, I want to thank everybody who signed up. actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And thank you to the podcast listeners on Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
A Harris County judge allowed a convicted murderer to remain free on bond so he could get his hair cut.
That's right. Fox 26's Randy Wallace has the latest in his ongoing series, Breaking Bond.
So first things first, and I know that this is very important to everybody out there in the audience, and if I didn't address it, I would get thousands upon thousands of comments about this. But yes, the woman right there, very attractive. Clinton, I know what you're thinking, and what I need you to do is stop thinking about it. Now, moving on from this, let's get into the actual segment.
June 28, 2021, 30-year-old Gregory Moore was gunned down by 33-year-old James Ray Lane.
If he would have just hurt him, I'd have been fine with that. But he was shooting to kill.
Moore, a father of four, was visiting Houston from New York.
So the story opens with absolute tragedy. You have a father of four, a New Yorker, much like myself, except that I don't have any kids, that I acknowledge, and he's down around visiting Houston, Texas, and he gets gunned down by somebody, a repeat offender, a violent offender, somebody who probably shouldn't have been out of jail in the first place, and he's killed. His parents are obviously here via Skype doing the local news segment, and they're talking about how he shot to kill, which if you go into the particulars of this case, you know for a fact that this was an intentional homicide. Some would say in the state of Texas, something worthy of the death penalty, but for whatever reason, the judge seems to think a little bit different. The judge seems to be under the impression that the most important issue here is whether or not the killer has a haircut that he likes as he's going down for potentially life in prison.
Did something stupid.
351st Criminal District Court Judge Nada Cornelio lowered Lane's $250,000 bond to $100,000. He's been out on bond for 2 years and has multiple curfew violations. August 17th, Lane is back before Judge Cornelio.
So we've seen this story over and over again, and honestly, it's really bad in the state of Texas for whatever reason. Maybe it's because they have better laws, so if you're going to have problems, they're going to come from the judicial branch in that state. But Houston, time and time again, produces judges that repeatedly lower the bond for convicted felons, for people with long histories of arrests, for people who should not see the light of day due to the fact that they committed a bunch of crimes, much less the crime that they're currently being charged for. Yet over and over again, we see Houston judges lowering bond, and this is for a murder charge. And by the way, as I've said a million times on this channel, when you are up for a bond, unless it's a stated flat amount, usually you only have to pay about 10 to 12% to a bail bondsman in order to get out. Now, a lot of people will retort, well, when you pay that to a bail bondsman, you don't get that money back. But the thing is, sure, that's true, but if you're a convicted murderer and you're up for a life sentence or maybe a potential death penalty, this incentivizes you to flee. And as you heard from this Breaking Bond segment, by the way, one of my favorite local news segments across the country, he violated his curfew, the terms of his bond, multiple times during the course of the time that he was bonded out. Call me crazy, call me a vicious, evil person, call me a conspiracy theorist, but I think if you're up on murder charges and you violate any of the conditions of your bond, you should have your bond violated. But the judge actually thinks differently.
He goes back to court and actually pleads guilty to murder.
Now, another retort that I often get is that these crimes are alleged, innocent until proven guilty, and there's no history at all whatsoever of holding somebody on bond, and even though that's completely ridiculous and untrue, in this particular case, we're talking about not the bail violations before he was convicted, we're talking about what the judge did after he was convicted. After he pled guilty to this murder, likely to avoid the death penalty, the judge decided to utilize her judicial discretion in a way that I find patently absurd and completely ridiculous.
Then, according to court documents, Cornelio allows Lane to remain free on bond until his sentencing so he could get a haircut.
I've not seen someone actually convicted of murder and then allowed to remain on bond pending the sentencing. That's a first.
Now, this sounds completely absurd and insane, but I will say there was a violent criminal in the city of Houston in particular. I believe we did a video about this. He wasn't convicted of murder, but he was convicted of crimes. He was let out pending his sentence. He never showed up. So then the police had to track down this guy, and I believe that person had 14 years hanging over his head. This guy in particular has a potential life sentence. Like I said, at least 25 years is to be expected for this brutal murder, yet he was let out, and specifically, according to the court documents, in order to get a haircut. Again, the guy's going to prison. He's going to Texas State Penitentiary for the crime of murder, and the judge is like, well, I mean, you're very upset about your hair, young man, and you could have got your hair, before you came to court and pled guilty, but you know what? Your haircut matters. Black haircuts matter. Black lives matter. We're gonna set you free because honestly, it might be a civil rights violation in order to hold you accountable for the murder that you just pled guilty to. So the guy was released, and the Breaking Bond segment actually went to the barbershop where this story gets oddly hilarious, despite the fact that, of course, you're doing a story on a murderer and the family is distraught and 4 kids are without a father, and there's nothing about this story that should be hilarious.
We can confirm Lane did go to Mr. Dunn's barbershop for a haircut.
He just told me it was his last time that he was going to see me. And I was like, for what? You moving? He was like, nah, I got to turn myself in. I was like, why is it going to be your last time? He was like, I murdered somebody.
Look, I know it's not supposed to be funny. I know this story is not supposed to be hilarious. But the thing is, this conversation with the barber, as recounted by the barber, just makes me laugh each and every time I think about it. The guy's in there getting his haircut. He's like, hey man, I'm not gonna see you for a while. Probably stiffed him on the tip, if we're being honest. But if he's a good guy, if he's a decent guy, he probably gave him a tip for all his years of service. And he's like, why man, you moving somewhere? You doing something normal with your life? And he's like, nah, I gotta turn myself in. And then he's like, what did you do? And the guy's like, I murdered somebody. I killed somebody.
I was like, why is it gonna be your last time? He was like, I murdered somebody.
But by the way, the shape up is a little messed up on this side. Can you fix it? I know you're holding up the mirror. I know you're a little bit shocked. By the way, I am armed now and I'm not paying for this haircut. It's one of the most absurd things that you could possibly imagine. And again, I appreciate the barbershop owner coming here. And by the way, the local news did a stellar job advertising this barbershop. So if you're in the neighborhood and you're looking for a kind ear, and maybe, just maybe, if you're convicted of murder and let out by a crazy judge, he might go to the local news and recount your conversation, go check out this barbershop right here. I believe it's called Mr. Dunn's.
Gregory Moore's dad and stepmom couldn't believe the judge allowed Lane to remain free.
I think that's nonsense. Like, if he pleaded guilty, he should have been locked up right then and there. Like, why give him, it's been 2 years now.
So I just want you to think about who's talking about this and who's describing this as crazy. The family is from New York. We have New York State bail laws. So if you're charged with a number of crimes that you should be held pre-trial, regardless of your criminal history, regardless of your propensity to bail jump, you are not bail eligible in the state of New York. You're going to get the soft on crime treatment. And these people, New Yorkers, my people, talking about my old people, because I was actually born in Texas, are saying that this is ridiculous and absurd and it makes no sense and it's insanity, and they're 100% right. It makes no sense. The guy committed murder. He's looking at a giant sentence. The idea that he's gonna just turn himself in, or more importantly, even if he does, the idea that as a judge, you want to take the chance that this guy will just turn himself in, makes no sense at all. It's terrible policy, and this judge, like many other Houston judges, should be removed from office. I don't know what's going on in the state of Texas. I look at Governor Ron DeSantis getting rid of woke district attorneys in his state, and then I look over to Texas, which is a traditionally more red state, and Greg Abbott just won't take a stand on this issue. Honestly, Greg Abbott won't take a stand on almost any issue, in my opinion.
Letting him go get a haircut? For what? For what? My son can't get a haircut. My son can't spend holidays with us. He can't see his kids get a haircut. That boy should have been locked up from the beginning.
I like this lady. I'm so sorry for the loss of her stepchild, but she just makes perfect sense. And sometimes you need an average everyday person, somebody who's not overly invested in politics or anything like that, or policy, to state the obvious. For what? Why does he need a haircut? He should be going to jail for life. Why is the judge letting him out? So he can see his barber one last time. He took a father away from his 4 children. He took a son away from his parents, from his father. This is a ridiculous thing, but it just goes to show you the complete and utter sea change that we've had in this country, in large portions of this country, even in red states, towards how we view the criminal. I think somebody who murders somebody, who goes out of their way to intentionally commit this crime against a father visiting a city that he's not aware of, is a scumbag, and I think they deserve to be sent up a creek for a very long time. The judge looks at this person, thinks, you know what, $250,000 bond, that's too high. You know what, following the conditions of your bond, that's too onerous for you. You know what, just because you're convicted of a murder and you have a long criminal history that led up to that murder doesn't mean that you're not entitled to a haircut at your favorite barbershop. I think you're deserving of that because you've been such a good young man, not even following the conditions of the bond that I, the judge, laid out for you. This is a mentality. It's cancerous. It's something that is infecting this country. And again, I will state it for the millionth time, it happens in red states. And if you think it's just contained to blue cities, sure, that's where it's more prominent. But these people get out. They go affect people all around in other communities. You can't just wall yourself off metaphorically, because guess what? The crime spills out. They are driving up the crime in our nation, and it could impact you. Believe me, there are a number of cases of people coming out to the burbs, people coming out to neighboring counties, solid red counties with solid government officials, and victimizing good people who would never even dream of voting for this.
Back in March, Judge Cornelio allowed Christopher Diaz to remain free on bond after pleading guilty to assaulting a family member and getting a 14-year prison sentence.
Christopher Diaz has had multiple felony convictions.
Diaz spent a month on the run after he failed to go back to court to begin his prison term.
So this is the story that I referenced earlier in this segment. I believe we did a video on it, but honestly, I don't remember. But my point is, the guy was convicted. He was looking at a lengthy sentence. He had a lengthy criminal history. And guess what? Turns out, when he knows he's going to be sentenced for a long period of time, he decided to flee. He decided to escape, and it took them over a month to recapture this person, which should not have needed to be done in the first place because he was convicted, and all you have to do is hold somebody awaiting sentencing. I mean, seriously, how stupid can we get in terms of criminal justice policy? While there are limited circumstances where I'm sure letting somebody go home when they're awaiting their sentencing hearing makes sense, this is patently absurd. This isn't even a innocent until proven guilty kind of situation. This is, you're guilty, but we kind of don't care. Even though you have every incentive to run because the trial phase is over, we're going to give you a chance because you know what? The criminal's needs, wants, and desires matter more than the victim. You think the judge even faced the victims when she pulled this decision? You think the judge thought that she had to address this to the public? No, she feels like there's no accountability for her actions. She doesn't care about the victims, so she's just enforcing her ideology from the bench over and over and over again, and honestly, it's absolutely shameful. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a Houston judge going way out of bounds. Till next time.